Oh, they are. Okay.
Yeah, I think we can go live. Thanks.
Doug, are we good to go?
Just finishing. There we go. Yes, we're live. We're good to go.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to call the meeting to order of the City of Winona Planning Commission, Monday, February 28th, 2022. I'd like to call the roll.
Chair Moore.
Here.
Alder Goforth.
Here.
Ms. Fox.
Here.
Here.
Mr. DePula.
Oops, sorry about that. Here.
Ms. Fallett.
Here.
Mr. Homburg.
Here.
Mr. Holmquist.
Here.
Mr. Stein is excused.
Thank you all. Appreciate you being here tonight. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from February 14th, 2022?
I'll move approval.
Corrine's moving approval. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Do I have any corrections, changes, tweaks? Chris?
Okay, on page 2, the very last sentence, Doug, you talked about the commission members that were, said the density was still too high. Add me to that list. I know I mentioned that. On page 3, at the very bottom, I would really like to reword it where it talks about all of us said that a reduction in parking could be considered. That makes it sound like a reduction from what was presented. So I'd rather see it that the reduction in parking as presented could be considered, because that was the intent of the people there, is describing why we could agree to it being a little bit less than our standard. And then on page 4, back when I talked about these phosphorus, in the middle of that B at the very end, quality than water that drained directly into a stormwater system instead it did not drain. The point was that if it drained directly to a stormwater system, it wouldn't go across the grass and pick up additional phosphorus. And then in the next sentence down, the runoff from commercial sites in light of this new finding, because we don't regulate homes, it's in regards to commercial sites in our ordinance.
Got it.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Anybody else? All those in favor of approving the minutes as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Thank you. Do we have anybody here this evening that is here to appear that is not part of a public hearing? In other words, that wishes either not to speak during the public hearing portion or is here on some other issue on which we don't have a public hearing tonight. Anybody here to appear?
Nobody here in person.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. That being the case, we'll close the appearance section. We'll move to their unfinished business, which there is none, and we will move to number 6, new business. A public hearing on the request by Go Right Way for construction of a zoning permit for site modifications for a new use at 2801 Industrial Drive, case number 2-003-2022. Representatives from Go Right Way, you have the floor.
Hi, good evening. I'll start out. My name is RJ Bast, one of the co-owners of Go Right Way. Again, good evening, everybody.
Welcome.
Well, yeah, thank you. So I'm one of the co-owners. Just a brief little history. We have 25 locations in Wisconsin. This is our first one in the Madison area, so Monona. So we just closed at the end of December, and right now we're leasing a place. We operate a little UW shuttle, about 10 shuttle buses. We also provide school bus transportation and motor coach transportation. But right now our shuttle in Madison is only 10 buses, so we were looking for a property, and this property works for us. It also it was also attractive because part of the property is being leased by a company called Latner, and we intend to continue that lease to them. They actually lease the back portion of the property. And for our operation, we just really need a small office right now and room to park our buses. And we have about 12 employees that, drivers and office staff that operate our service in Madison.
Okay. And are you the sole representative tonight, or is there somebody else from your team that also wishes to speak?
So Ken Gray and Steve Fazlovic are on the line from Go Right Way. Steve Fazlovic, I'm the Vice President of Operations for our commercial division. I oversee the operations out of our future Monona location. As RJ mentioned, we operate a small shuttle service there, and hope to continue to grow in that area and hire more folks from Monona and the surrounding area. That's it.
Hello, my name is Ken Cray. I'm with MSI General. We've been working with Go Right Way for over 60 years, and we're the design build contract partner with them. And so we've are looking to just help them, move into this space and then work with, the city to, obviously get them operational, and then depending on how the business evolves, continue to develop the property as needed. So.
I also did want to mention that we do own all of our properties that we operate out of, and we want to make sure they look presentable and nice. So, we pick up the garbage, we make sure the landscaping is trimmed and all that good stuff. As you know, or if you've driven by this property, it maybe wasn't the best up to keep, or best. There was some garbage in the parking lot and things like that. So as soon as the snow melts and we can get out there and clean it up, we want to make sure we do that for our neighbors and just for our own employees and our reputation.
Great. So before we close the public hearing section, would one of you like to describe a little bit further the drawing that's in front of us? I mean, I appreciate the sort of overview, but if you could just describe beyond the overview what you've got here for sketch.
Sure. Steve and RJ, you want me to do that? Okay, so the existing building is the pink and the orange highlighted areas. And currently the Lantner's tenant is using the orange space, and the kind of the bluish purplish color is where their team parks their vehicles and really operates out of. And then the existing pinkish color portion of the building is unoccupied currently. And then there is a small basement section underneath the pink area, and that is where Go Right Way would like to put a small office to operate out of. And then, as they said, they've got the 10 mini coaches, and then their employees that park. Mainly there's a couple people in the office, and then the mini coaches would park in the green area, and they would park their cars in the same green area. And then, like I said, there's 2 people in the office, and then the other 10 spots are for the drivers. And so that's the intended initial use. And then the rest of the site, there's some future parking potentially down the road, as well as the existing plans had, I believe, a previously approved future addition, which is that 16,700 feet towards the back of the building. So again, the initial intent, as RJ had mentioned, was just to get them operating currently, and then see how the business evolves from there. And so that's the plan at this point.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak on this proposal before I close the public hearing portion? Okay, then I'll close the public hearing, and we'll go to 6B, the pre-hearing conference on the request by Go Right Way for consideration of a zoning permit for site modifications for a new use at 2801 Industrial Drive, case number 2-003-2022. Doug?
Thank you. So the request tonight is the pre-hearing for the site improvements as well as the new tenant at 2801 Industrial Drive. Just heard a little bit about the new user, the Go Right Way. The existing logistics tenant in the back of the building is to remain. And the main modifications here are going to be for the parking, sort of the reallocation of that. The co-location doesn't require any new construction or anything like that to the building. The property itself at 2801 Industrial is zoned commercial industrial. The comprehensive plan lists this as industrial in both the current and future, so the proposed user appears appropriate with the use that aligns with the comprehensive plan. As far as staff is concerned, parking is the main consideration here. The letter of application outlines 9 mini coaches, as well as 2 wheelchair accessible minivans that are in the current fleet, and then there's the possibility of expansion in the future. The parking plan, just sort of counting it, obviously the text shows the 12 employee parking stalls and 10 coach parking. There's a little bit more than that, just sort of looking at the existing striping there, closer to 20 for employee parking, including an ADA accessible, as well as the 10 stalls. Staff's opinion really here is that the markings are going to be important, sort of allocation, delineation of this space, how the site flow works with the current logistics tenants going through to the back as well as just generally the sort of the surface, possible resurfacing to be looked at here. Also on the site visit, the area sort of at the front of the building, shown on the site plan as future parking. There is some gravel there, so there may be some discussion about future uses for that, even if it's turned into some sort of green space in the interim, even if it's not to be, repaved with asphalt. But also the 2 curb cuts going off to industrial. There may be some discussion there of possible entry only, exit only, just to help with site flow there. The hours of operation seem to be predominantly 7 till 7, Monday through Friday, with limited weekend hours. Don't appear to be conflicts with the existing logistics tenant there. A couple other elements that are not included for this pre-hearing would be the site lighting, landscaping. One thing that I did discuss when I've met with the applicant previously was the possibility maybe of some landscaping along Industrial Drive just for some screening, whether that's sort of bushes to a certain height, something to kind of soften the aesthetic there. So all things to potentially be discussed and maybe requested in advance of the formal hearing. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Chris, would you like to start us off?
Sure, thanks. So the number one question is it an appropriate use, and I believe it certainly is. An industrial park is what this really is. It's old Benton Dickinson property. It was a little high tech back then, but it's appropriate. RJ, I smiled when you said the site looks a little bit underkept. Honestly, when you drive by, it looks abandoned.
Yeah.
I think you were being kind. So we've got a couple things going on here. Again, the use I think is wholly appropriate. There was a building up front that's been tore down, and they never finished the restoration. That's where all that gravel, a lot of the gravel sits. And there's a couple different things that were demolished, and we don't allow just gravel sitting outside of a fenced area. So what I would probably, in addition, it looks like when you go up to the far west side of the site, just about getting up into the orange portion of the building, it looks like a dump site. There's just dirt and junk all over, and it's eroding over your blacktop and everything. So what I'm getting at is we need to have some kind of restoration in here. And what I would suggest is you somehow get it, how would I say? I think we'll have a determination and have it agreed to with staff and everything where the impervious is right now. Because with Dane County's ordinance, when you want to add impervious, it gets expensive for your water quality improvements. And this site is overbuilt with impervious. So what I was going to suggest is you take those gravel areas, you don't need them right now, instead of spending the money to pave them, put a little skiff coat of topsoil over there, seed them, and just mow them. But somehow have it recorded that that is impervious area that the site had, and it will remain that, because if you ever want to put your addition out the back, again, we have regulations, but you could probably give up some of that to get get the one in the back without having to do a lot as far as water quality. For my property, I'd be careful to at least document the impervious and not give that up. But having said that, you need to fix up the front. I mean, it looks, no offense, it looks terrible right now. And I know you just bought it, it's not your fault. Your plan does not show the island. You have one tree island up front by where you want to put your office and your handicap path. That of course would have to stay with those trees, 2 trees in it. And then I agree with staff that probably a little fix up. A lot of it's going to be taking down the wild trees that have grown up in between the foundation and the paving and all those different areas. I'm not sure what to say about where the building used to be. You look, there's some odd parking that's coming off perpendicular to Industrial Drive, right at a right angle that backs right onto Industrial Drive. We'd probably want to get rid of that. I don't expect you'd have that building up there anymore. And Doug's right as far as the curb cuts, but there's not a lot of traffic here. So at least I would suggest we kind of phase it in and, you know, spend the money where it's going to do the most good right now just to fix the site up and make it look a little better. And perhaps you'll do something else with the property, certainly with all that square footage. And when you come back for something else, that might be the time to spend some money. And maybe by then you'll know which curb cuts you need, you don't need. There's just a bevy of curb cuts there, but without a formalized plan, I don't know to have you take them out right now and then come back in a year or so and say, well, we need these back in, doesn't seem to be real good use of whatever you can do to the property now. So for me, I would say fix it up best you can. And then the water quality basin that's in the southwest corner, there's a release pipe on the south end that goes out, looks like it just goes out into the gutter, probably on Industrial, but it looks like it's breached on the north end and all the water circumventing the pond and just going out towards that big apron end wall in the storm sewer easement and going down the ditch. So you might want to take a look at that too and to see where it's at. You are required to do a yearly inspection on your water quality improvements anyway. So it's hard to tell right now with everything frozen. Right now there's a big chunk of ice in there. So my guess is it's probably not working the way it was supposed to. Doug talked about lighting. There's a lot of poles and everything there. So I think it's up to you to just take inventory of what you have and see what you need and what you think. I don't know, Doug, we might have old photometrics from Benton Dickinson when they were there, because I know they came in quite a few times for different permits. So if you look under the Benton Dickinson file, we should have that. I think that's all I see for now. I mean, I have a lot of things I've mentioned, but I think it's great that you want to come in here and fix this property up and get it back to where it used to be. It's a good use and be a good thing to have there. I don't have an issue with the mini coaches parking up by the road. Right now, there's rental trucks parking up there. And like Doug said, just have a good plan for how you're going to park them and how you're going to get your employees in and out, where everything's going to be. I think the rest would be great. And I think at some point in time in the future, when you go to greater uses on this site, would be the time to look at long-term solutions for where all that asphalt and the buildings have been removed. For now, get it so it looks good, so it doesn't look abandoned. Yep. I'm not sure how they got through their demo permit without finishing the restoration there, but I'm sure you saw it when you bought it.
Yep, yeah. There's that dirt, it's like a dirt pile in the corner.
Oh yeah, and that if you look now, it's just all washing onto your parking lot. It's, you know, that's an erosion mess, but I mean, that kind of stuff just needs to be fixed up. It needs an owner that cares.
Right, yep.
So happy to see you guys take it on.
Great. And if you look at all of our other properties in Wisconsin, I mean, we're great stewards of the community. We try to upkeep our properties and they all look very nice.
Yeah, I'm not blaming you for this. You're walking into it, but with some thoughts on, I think, what the first step should be.
So,
Thanks.
Chris, are you saying we could plant grass like in the spring in the area, but still counted as a impervious? Or
I think it's a tightrope act. I think you need to get together with staff, and Doug could also get together with our consultant. I just want to document that site has X amount of impervious, because per county ordinance, if you add impervious, you have to step up to a whole new level of water quality improvements. This site has all the impervious. So we would like it to look nice for now before you have a long-term plan, but I don't want to do that and cost you tens of thousands of dollars in the future. You say, oh, they made us take it out. Now we got to pay to put it back in. I don't think that's a fair scenario. So somehow I think if we can get it so it's mowable, and we don't allow just gravel yards outside of fenced-in areas, but make it presentable and mowable, but document that you have that much impervious. And I don't think that would be that hard to do.
Yeah, we can create a plan that shows all the impervious, what was existing and what was previously approved as potential impervious, and then just have that on file. Right?
Yeah. The previously approved potential won't count.
Okay.
But all the impervious you have now will count. The previous approved was approved under a different ordinance. The county just changed their ordinance this year. So anything that goes in now, if it had been approved and you were building it back then, it would be under the old ordinance. But right now, anything you do in the future has to be under the new ordinance, which is more restrictive, which is where I'd be very possessive of my existing impervious if I were you.
Always.
Okay.
Thanks.
Right. Thank you, Chris. Christy?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, excellent advice from Chris. As you can see, he's in the business with his background image. But I just want to say this is such a great parcel, and congratulations on acquiring it. It seems ideal for your usage. I definitely don't see any problems with that usage. Really looking forward to seeing the before and after photos. It is in rough shape, and like you said, you're good stewards of the community, so looking forward to seeing what you can do there. Now, I was in that building probably, I'm thinking it was like 4 years ago when Phoenix was working out of there, and it was scary. It was like a haunted house in there. So I just want to make sure it looks like you're going to fix it up to make it inhabitable for your employees. But yeah, it was in really rough shape. So I'm looking forward to seeing your improvements. I really don't have anything else to add. I think it's, congratulations on finding that site. Great central location.
Great. Thank you. Maureen?
Hi. Yeah. I also agree. Great use. I think it'll be, it has a lot of potential for you to grow. It sounds like that is something that you're very interested in. As far as the traffic flow question that Doug mentioned, I guess I would just suggest that maybe you just have a conversation with Blattner. I don't know when their employees come to and from the site. I mean, if your buses are leaving and they're all on a schedule and trying to get out, I don't know if that would create some kind of a potential hazard for your lease tenant. So maybe you do want to identify one of those to be for them to enter and exit, and then you use the other for your business. So I guess that would just be something for you to talk about on site. I don't know about concrete and pavement. However, I'm just wondering, in our site design standards, we do talk about the type of pavement that needs to be used for light duty use versus heavy duty use. And so I guess I don't know if what is there is meeting those standards, or if more needs to be done to make sure that that lot is going to have the longevity you need for the traffic that you're proposing to have those minibuses. I don't know if they need a different level of asphalt or surface.
Yeah, we'll address that as appropriate to make sure. I mean, there's a mix of heavy duty and light duty asphalt on the property, and so the intent is that we would have the buses travel in the heavy duty areas, and so that's why it's designed as it currently is right now. So
okay.
Then certainly any future improvements would follow suit accordingly. So
okay. And then you are this is what you've shown on your plan. This is what your striping plan is as well.
Currently, yes, that's the proposed, that's the proposed for this current configuration, yes.
Okay. And then I agree about the making it look a little nicer, putting some landscaping in there just to, you look at the surrounding uses and they have some different landscaping and things that make their site look a little nicer. So I think it sounds like what you're planning is going to add to that as well. And that's all.
Thank you, Corinne. Patrick?
Okay, so I really don't have a ton to add. It's pretty much been gone over at this point. I concur with Chris and everyone else who's been speaking that the building needs attention, the site needs attention, and I think everyone knows that. The use is completely compatible, and I don't foresee any issues whatsoever, so I think it's a good thing that this is happening. So, yeah, I have nothing to add and support it.
Okay, great, thank you. Brian?
I concur. Great use, and everybody has already addressed the concerns I had.
Great. Susan?
Same thing, nothing to add. I think it's a definite upgrade to the area, and you are aware of what you're getting into. And the nice thing is you can develop what you need now and then keep in mind future use. Including the traffic flow and landscaping, lighting. You may have existing lighting with the poles that are there if they're still functional. So that's all to come. But yeah, I think it's great. So that's it.
Thank you. Anything else? RJ, Steve, and Ken, I would just say, as the chair, again, welcome. We're glad you're here. Thank you for the TLC that the property much needs. And we look forward to seeing you again as things progress. Do you feel like you got a good sense of direction from this group, or do you need anything else from us tonight?
Yeah, thank you. Nice meeting everybody. Hopefully next time in person, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think
fingers crossed.
I think we got good guidance.
Okay, great. Well, thanks very much. Have a good evening, and we look forward to seeing things spruced up over there.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move to item number 6C, which is public hearing on the Lakestone properties on a request for consideration of a general development plan, GDP, for the site located at approximately 6,000 and 6,400 Dishholt Drive and 2,000 Engle Street for mixed-use development, case number 2-004-2022. Anyone here who is here to speak on this particular proposal?
Hello, my name is Brian Spanos. I'm with Lakestone Properties. Good evening tonight. Brett Riemann is also here.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you. If it's okay, I'd just like to give you a little background. I won't take too much time on who Lakestone Properties is, and then we can go into a little background about the office park and a little bit about the market, and Brett can take over from there with some of the details on the development itself. So again, my name is Brian Spanos. So Lakestone Properties is located in McFarland. We do self-manage all of our own properties that we develop. We're a development and management company that specializes in mainly new construction of mixed-use developments and multifamilies. Currently, we manage around 500 units throughout McFarland, Stoughton, Oregon, Monona, and other surrounding areas. I also think it's very important to point out that we do stay involved in the day-to-day management of these properties to keep the quality and the condition in excellent shape. So just a little background. I'm happy to answer more questions about Lakestone Properties if you have them. But the property we'd like to talk about tonight is the Southtown Office Park. So I'll give you some history on kind of where the office park is today and some of the things we've done to it, and then we can go into some of the development ideas. So,
Brian, would you like to have Doug share the screen with you? So would that be helpful, or?
More than welcome. If he wants to put up the screen of just kind of the existing site plan of the office park, might help a little bit. As I just talk about the existing site.
Elisa, could you potentially pull up the Plan Commission packet, please, and just go through those slides? Thank you.
Wait, two kind of screenshots. Perfect. Great, great. So the current office park has 4 two-story office buildings located on it for a total of 55,000 square feet between the 4 buildings. The site is 4.93 acres, and the office park itself is approximately 40 years old. Lakestone purchased the property in 2019 and has invested over $200,000 in improvements to the interior and exterior of the office park. We've worked hard to keep the maintenance and the aesthetics of the building high, but as some of the systems are getting older, it's getting difficult for us for replacement parts, and some of the mechanical systems are not optimal. We're starting to look at options for this development. Some background on the existing tenants that we do have here. Currently, the office park has 48 businesses throughout the office park. The average size tenant is approximately 800 square feet. And there is a variety of businesses throughout the park. They include medical, chiropractor, counseling, therapy. There's financial businesses in there. There's nonprofits, general business, accounting, and some law firms. You know, as we've looked to continually improve the development, we've had feedback from the tenants as we've owned it for a couple of years now. And some of the spaces are looking tired and the buildings are starting to look dated. As I've spoke to some of the tenants, as we do self-manage this property, they would like to see more activity in the park as the vacancy has been high for the past few years. Actually, in the last year alone, we've lost 3 of our tenants that have moved to newer buildings. And this is after we've invested in the property to improve it and obviously make it better. So, and then again, I think if you look at the map here, the way that the layout of the development is, one of the largest complaints that we get from our current tenants, it is difficult for them to find their businesses, especially when they're in the back of the 6400 and the 2000. You do have to drive around the development, enter one common door, and find the space. So that's one of our most common complaints from the tenants that we have there. So, you know, as we look at the market itself, the office park itself is sitting about 70% occupied. And we're looking for a development that would maximize the highest and best use of the site. We do understand that there are other potential multifamily projects in the city of Monona, some that are on the Plan Commission agenda very recently, and we feel the demand for these types of units continues to be strong. I actually reached out to one of the property managers of the Current in Monona. I wanted to find out how their phase 2 was doing since it opened up in December. And I was very pleased to hear that she had told me that they've actually rented 130 of the 143 units they have available, approximately 130. She said there's some applications in. So very impressive. And again, it goes to show the demand of this type of housing in the city of Monona, and even throughout the winter months to rent those units so quickly. Market research again around the city of Monona shows very low vacancy rates and a high need for additional housing. The other thing we really like about this site is the ease to the access to the west side, to the downtown Madison area, and then east side, and the proximity to the Beltline. We feel this would be a real ideal location for a mixed-use development. I'll turn it over to Brett. He'll go into some of the details of the project and talk a little bit more about what some of our thoughts are. So, Brett, are you out there?
Yeah, I'm here. You guys hear me okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brian. Again, Brett Riemann with Lakestone. Brian gave a good overview of what we've been through over the last 3 years. And again, the location is great, and we really felt that long-term when we bought it, it would be an office park. And then, you know, things happen, COVID happens, all other things kind of happen, and you kind of relook at stuff. So it just challenged us to think, what is the highest and best use for this site? And, you know, is it office? Is it something else? Or is it a combination? So, it just challenged us in a number of different ways. So we engaged 3 architects to just do some density planning, asking them to look at a residential components as well as office, so a true mixed use. And they each came up with, I don't know if you'd like to slide to the options, but there's two options that we provided. Both, between the three architects, they all came up with 2 to 3 building site plans. A number of residential units were between 190 and 230. Commercial space was between 20,000 and 40,000 square feet, and then a mix of underground and surface parking. For the residential component, your standard mix of studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, possibly some 3 bedrooms. But for the commercial space, that's interesting. It's, many developers these days don't want commercial under residential. They're trying to fight it, but, different communities make them do it. Just because you don't know when it's going to fill or if it's going to fill, and apartments have been a lot easier to fill in commercial space, not so much. So, but in this case, like Brian said, we have a lot of good businesses in this park. And we want to make sure we have space that they can move to if they want to. So, the amount of space I think is a lot for a commercial, for a mixed use development. But, again, phase 1 and phase 2 could differ based on the interest, but I think we are open-minded and want to be able to provide that amount of commercial space for those existing tenants in the park. Medium and large businesses. So if you're looking at this site on the Gishold side, where the commercial space would be, kind of the facing Southtown Mall, they'd have their medium to larger businesses could have their own entrance. They'd have signage above their entrance, easy to get to for the customers. Smaller companies, 500 to 800 square feet, that would be more typical office space. So there'd be one general entrance to them into the building, and then that would lead into a lobby with a directory, shared bathrooms, and then hallways to go to their respective suites. So we want to make sure we can offer spaces for all the different sizes within the businesses in the park. Timing and phasing. It depends on the site plan that we select, but it could be between 2 and 3 phases. Phase 1 would just be 1 building that we would construct. Like for this plan, this Rainmaker plan, we would construct phase 1 where you see it there. It would be removing 1 office building. That would be 6,000 Gishold. That just works out based on how it lays out on the site, the leases that have expired within 6,000 Gishold. But the earliest we would do that would be spring of 2023 with a completion in 2024. Phase 2 and or 3 depends on how phase 1 leases up, but also leases in those other 3 buildings. Some of them come up in 2023, 2024, and then 2025. So the earliest we would start phase 2 or 3 would be 2025, and with completion in 2026. Parking was brought up in the staff report. By the way, that staff report you guys do a great job. We've done this a lot of times, and I've never seen a staff report that thorough. So kudos to you guys for putting that together and preparing the Plan Commission members. So, but parking was brought up. So if we use the previous plan that JLA put together, just as an example, 230 apartments, 23,000 square feet of commercial space, 354 stalls underground and surface. But per the city zoning code, we basically, with those, we'd meet the residential numbers, but we'd be short about 79, 80 stalls for commercial space. Seems like a lot. We do feel like there's a pretty good mesh between sharing between residential and commercial. I've heard this before, we're sharing and then it just goes completely backwards and it doesn't work. But for this type of commercial space, it's normal business use. It's not restaurants, it's not retail, it's more general office space. Some medical uses could be after hours, but for the most part, the office employees and visitors will be there during office hours and then leaving from there. So I think there's a balance there, but if we get positive feedback from the group today, we can certainly engage a third party for a parking study, sharing sharing vehicle study to see what that looks like and continue to refine it and get people's feedback. Height was another thing that was brought up in the staff report. 5 stories. More developments that I've seen now are 5 stories. I think if you're going to try to create a high quality development, you need the density, and with the density, or with height, you get the density. But I think in this situation, 5 stories fits in pretty well. You have retail on one side, office on the other side. Really don't have any residential, smaller homes that, from a context standpoint, but open to the feedback on that. But we felt that 5 stories would actually fit in and be appropriate with the surroundings of the site. But again, love to hear people's feedback. But big picture, we just feel that bringing residential to this side of Broadway helps activate the area during the day, during the nights, with one community schools doing what they're doing on one side, with the improvements to the old Shopco on the other side. This development could just continue that positive momentum and transformation to this side of Broadway, and hopefully build the case for new food outlets and retail and maybe some entertainment venues. So I think we've probably gone on long enough. Happy to answer additional questions or listen to feedback.
Great, thank you. Is anyone else here, Doug, that you're aware of to speak in the public hearing portion of this development?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, any citizens? Great, thank you. We will then close the public hearing portion of this development and go to 6D, the pre-hearing conference for Lakestone Properties on the request consideration of a general development plan for the site located at approximately 6,000 to 6,400 Gishel Drive and 2,000 Ingle Street for mixed-use development, case number 2-004-2022. Doug, floor is yours.
Thank you. So yes, as mentioned, this is the pre-hearing for a possible GDP at the Southtown Office Park. I will say this is the very early stages. I always encourage applicants in this position to come forward to get feedback. And so even though it is noticed for a GDP, it's really because of the phasing of it. But this is really to sort of speak more high level. So the site itself is just under 5 acres in total, with existing office tenants. A couple different concepts submitted, ranging between 190 and 230 residential units in a phased approach, with 20 to 40,000 square feet of ground floor commercial. The site itself is zoned Community Design District, which allows for a compatible mix of residential, commercial, industrial, or open space uses which meet the goals of the comprehensive plan. In the comprehensive plan, it's designated as commercial in both the current and future land use maps, which, going by the COP-C definition as included in the comp plan, describes it as land used for retail, service, commercial, and office uses. This would be the first residential in this area, especially in the city of Monona. Staff recommends discussion tonight of how this meets the vision for both the site and the whole area moving forward, especially the Southtown area. I know I've certainly had inquiries about other residential in this area. I think it came up last year or 2 years ago with this body as well. So I think just a general discussion of that, the land use would be important. In terms of the retail, 20 to 40,000 is proposed. The office park has a total of 55,000 currently, with about 70% occupancy, so just under 40,000 square feet occupied, with the plan to offer that space to the existing tenants to give them first refusal, with a potential backfill thereafter. Recognizing it's conceptual, the parking numbers are included in the staff report for the JLA proposal. As mentioned, I think some discussion about possible remedies to the deficit would be important, but also considering alternative transportation opportunities, as well as connectivity, which I think is going to be really important at this site, because it would be the first to come in for a residential project, such that it's not isolated, sort of out on its own. Massing and density as well. 5 stories is proposed here, which would be some of the tallest buildings in the city. From the massings that were submitted, there is some definition, but no stepped massing at the top floor. There would be some differentiation in materials between the ground floor retail commercial space as well as the upper level residential. The two proposals in terms of density range between 39 and 47 units per acre. Again, the staff report includes the table that's been in the last couple multifamily projects, just for comparison, just for that to be made. I think staff's recommendation there would be to evaluate and sort of weigh up the need for the housing with the appropriate density in this location, as well as the land use discussion and the points that were made by the applicant. So I think generally, in summary, the applicant would appreciate feedback on the general concept, as well as any of the details that I've called out here that you wish to share. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Doug. Brian, would you like to start us off on this one?
Sure. Let's see. So I think I'll just kind of go through the order that you have here, Doug, and kind of give some initial thoughts. And I'm really curious to hear other commission members on this one. I do think I remember back to some of our discussions on previous potential proposals in this area regarding residential. I'm not sure if I remember if they were a true good mixed use development in the sense of being able to have pretty significant amount of commercial space there. This one I think intrigued me a little bit when I saw that it wasn't just a pure residential concept, and it really did include a good chunk of commercial that almost, depending on what version, almost meets your current existing lease needs, and in some respects fairly close to your maxed commercial space that you currently have. And since, I don't know, probably over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, the amount of residential kind of properties that have built up along Broadway on that end, even though a good chunk in this area have not been on the Monona side of the street, I think there is kind of an increase of presence of residential on this stretch of Broadway. So I do kind of appreciate the proposal kind of coming forward right now, and I'm not necessarily I'm still open to see and hear from others on their thoughts. I know we have talked about current and future land use in the past, and the issue of when we are taking areas that we really have dedicated for commercial use and we make changes, that I think it has a significant impact. I say that because there was another property on the other end of Broadway that I was pretty adamant that I did not think was a good use for residential. And I did that for a variety of reasons. One, I didn't think the use for that location was the best. I thought it had connectivity issues, and a variety of other pieces. And I know some of my colleagues here had some points of agreement and some points of disagreement with me on that, and that's important for us to be able to share. Here, I see less connectivity issues as I did at the other property. So take that for what it is at this point. The site design, if I look at the two different kind of proposed ideas that have kind of just been floated here, although I like the commercial space of option 2, I actually like the layout on the site of option 1 a bit better. The idea of surface parking in front of your commercial spaces, I think it pushes residential in a different area and doesn't have them butting up to the streets. It has them kind of push more to the center of the property. I suspect that one, it has much more of the residential parking underneath, commercial parking right in front of the commercial spaces, which seems to be more ideal. I know it's very early in the stage, so the 5 stories, I think it's tough for us to, or it's at least tough for me to get a visualization of that in comparison to some other properties based on how it steps back or how it might be designed from a massing standpoint. Setbacks, again, with option JLA option, I think it has a little bit better setback because it has the parking out front. The other one, I think, just pushes up the residential right up to the front of the street, which I don't think is ideal in this area. Circulation, I don't have concerns at this point. Ground floor uses, as I said, that you're depending on kind of where you're able to push these numbers. You're getting close to what you currently have leased out, which I think is ideal. Parking, Doug went into some of that, and if we ended up moving forward, we definitely get into parking as it relates. One of the things you may have heard if you've logged in on some previous meetings, parking becomes a pretty big issue with us. And the key piece for us is, or at least for me, parking signifies a density issue. So if you end up with parking issues based on our standards, you likely have a density issue. And so, although you want to push upwards, I get it, but there is a maximum height when you figure that out. And so, to me, that's kind of the balancing teeter-totter part of it. That as you push up and as you have more residential units, the likelihood that you're going to run into some parking issues, and we're going to have a little pushback at this group. Architecture and massing, I kind of basically commented on that at this point, and I think that is it for me so far.
Thank you, Brian. Patrick.
All right. I guess the first question I have is, I noticed that there's not a proposal or any sort of discussion about affordable housing for this particular project. So I guess it's more of a question at some point for the developer if there's some consideration there, because we have, we know that there's a need in Monona for workforce housing. And so I'm curious if affordability could be, I would like to see housing affordability be considered for this particular project. Bike parking, I don't really see any of that. Common elements and amenities are going to be super important because we've already talked about some connectivity issues elsewhere, so it's kind of an island in and of itself. It will potentially work. It might add some benefits to One City schools, perhaps, getting people closer to where their children might go to school. So that's something that I'm thinking about too, and how that synergy might exist. I'm curious about any sustainability measures for this particular property, if the developer is considering such measures. The parking plan needs to be fleshed out. Landscaping is going to be super important along with those amenities. And I think a lot of attention is going to have to be made to make this kind of a stellar landscaping plan. The overall design, I know this is kind of the first shot at it, but I would think that being that this is kind of isolated, that it's in a place that isn't super appealing regarding, like on the surface, as a location to live, I would think that the design is going to have to stand out a little bit, and that would be beneficial to the project. The mass of the project is of concern, so I'm curious what the other commissioners have to say about that, and that's pretty much what I have at this point.
Patrick, do you have a leaning towards for the developers' help? Do you have a leaning towards option 1 or option 2 from what you're looking at so far?
Option 1 or option 2? It's hard to say. I'm not. I'm feeling sort of ambivalent about both at the moment.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Susan? You're muted.
Right. Just got it. We got it unmuted. I like the project. I think it is a good location for it. I think the residential can work there. I don't think I necessarily would object to 5 stories, but I do think that, especially with the first proposal, the GLA proposal, an 83 stall deficit is too big to be overcome by some other, I mean, to mitigate that, I think might require losing some of the density. So, I mean, that may cause you to think whether part of it could be 4, part of it 5, I don't know, step back. But 5 stories might not work just for that reason, just it might be a good way to reduce density. I think you definitely need green space. I like the list of amenities that you have, but I think including some green space because of the fact that it is a separate area. I do think it's appropriate though. I can really see this going there, and I also really appreciate you are reaching out to your current businesses to go in there, and there is a substantial amount of commercial, as was already said. It makes it different than some of the other projects we've had where they're just throwing in a little bit of commercial. You are trying to still use that, and I like that idea. I do think it could really be beneficial to the rest of Southtown as well, as you said. I mean, I think that's a good point. I think it's really appropriate. I don't have a strong preference between the proposals. I just think that whatever proposal you ultimately bring forward, you really need to look hard at the parking, the amenities that you'll be able to offer, and the green space, because I think that is important there. Let's see. Yeah, I think otherwise everything has been said that I would add. I think it really is an exciting project, so I look forward to seeing you work out some of those kinds of things and come back.
Thank you, Susan. Chris?
Okay, sorry, Susan, but I just don't think this is a good area for residential. And when you look at the plan we had up originally, you see it completely surrounded by commercial. And it wasn't very long ago, was it maybe a year ago, when the community came out in force and said they want to maintain their commercial presence there. I know there's residential across the road, but I might suggest that that hasn't been the most successful residential area in the city of Madison. So having said that, if the consensus of the commission were to go ahead with this, the minimum project I would support would have to have that 40,000 square foot of commercial. I don't think we give away commercial here to put in residential in the middle of our largest commercial area in the city. And those incubator offices I consider them incubators. I mean, it's a great startup place. And they're important. They're important for the city to have places for businesses to start. Actually, our business, our second office we ever had was in that park at 6200, and it served us well. And I think a lot of businesses have grown up through there. I think it's an important amenity to have for the community. That's where I think a minimum of the 40,000 square foot. And I'm not telling you that I like that proposal better. The commercial area that you put in is important. And as I think it was Brian mentioned, that it's really important to have that parking in front of your commercial area. So on this one that had 40,000, but then to put the buildings right up against the road, that kills the commercial space. And I'll go back to parking. Everybody talks about parking. The parking is a problem because it's too dense. And our code doesn't allow use of the street to solve your parking problem, because perhaps that street, especially with all the traffic there, might not have parking someday, or it might be some other use next to you that uses it. So you need to figure it out on your own site. And I know a couple of people said it's the density, and it is. And I think somebody said the remedy to the deficit parking, I would say, is to reduce the number of residential units. For me, if it goes ahead, the minimum is to keep that commercial at 40,000 square feet. And then residential units would be based on what you can fit in there for parking, to be able to park everybody. There's no way in the world you could ever convince me that 80 stalls can be made up by shared parking, because I know how apartments go. When somebody comes over that night, they're still parked there in the morning when the business wants to open. One of the beauties of the commercial you have right now, the office spaces, is that there's always a parking spot in front of those businesses. They're not taken up by someone else. When you have residential, whether it's a big gathering, whether it's people that came and maybe they don't work right away, and when those businesses open, there's no way to have those cars moved out of there. So I think the parking, if it goes ahead with combined with residential, would be incredibly critical. And then, as has been said before, I think amenities are incredibly critical. The current has some density, but it has extraordinary amenities too. And I know you've mentioned some on your letter here, but they're nice. They're not extraordinary. What are you going to do to make this property where it's desirable 20 years from now? Because every new building will rent up. We all know that. But what makes it special 10 and 20 years down the road? Because that's where the properties start to fail. That, and of course, if you sell it off and somebody else wants to just use it for a cash cow and don't put money back into it. I'm not suggesting that, but it's the amenities that you have there that will keep it viable. Because and the reason I talked about not liking the residential right of way is when we talked about this a year ago, we know this area has to grow, there's changes that have to happen, but now if we put this residential right in the middle of it, that's a dam. That's right in between the Southtown property and the WPS property. It means nothing will ever happen between these properties as far as commercial goes, and that's what really concerns me. And we don't have too many chunks of property this big with this much connected commercial. So as all the commissioners know, I'm very, very protective of our commercial properties. I think there's a lot of details we could talk about, but I think we really have to nail down, is this an appropriate use? I do appreciate the fact that you didn't come in here with a token 3 or 5,000 square feet of commercial, because I think that's silly. And for the commercial to work, it needs to be enough of a mass where there's energy during the day in the business areas. And like I say, it's a great incubator space you have right now. And I understand they're old. I know they're old and they need work. I get that. They look nice. When I'm sure everybody's out there and looked at them. I mean, you've done a great job of keeping that property up. It looks as nice as it can for its age, I think. So I commend you. I think you're a good landlord. So I think we need to come down tonight. Is this worth pursuing to have that much residential in the middle of our main commercial district?
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Maureen.
Yeah, I had similar concerns. When I was looking at you have 55,000 square feet, and then one of the options was only 20,000, yet you wanted to offer it to all your existing tenants. That, it just didn't seem like what if everyone wanted it, and then you would have to, have leases expire for half of your tenants. So I had similar concerns to Chris about the residential. I do remember that we did talk about that in this area, and I agree with Brian that things are a little bit different than when we had talked about it before. But I do think there's a need, I think, to be more thoughtful about, if there were to be residential here, how would that connect to other amenities or services or areas in the city? Because, one of the themes that we've had a lot over the last couple of years is talking about how are we making these new developments a part of our community, and that's important to us. So, we had a lot of discussion about the project on the other end of Broadway. They had created a very neighborhood feel to that. Like they recognized that they had maybe they weren't right in the center like some of the other developments. So they found ways to create a proposal that would appeal to more of a neighborhood feel. So I didn't really see consideration for pedestrian access around here. It's sort of plunked in the middle there. And there are, what you had mentioned about the location, about how it's close to the Beltline, close to downtown, it's close to everything, but you didn't really mention how it's close to our Monona amenities. And so I could see how residents there would, they would have to use Madison Parks. They would have to use some of the things in Madison. So I really feel that that is really important to think about. What would, kind of to Chris's point, why would somebody want to live there? What makes it, I guess, a place for them to call home? We've had a lot of really unique and creative proposals coming before us, and a lot of developers are thinking about that. So I guess I'd encourage you to think about what you could do differently from the residential perspective. We've also had a lot of discussions about the housing mix or the mix, and we've had, some discussions recently about whether or not there'd be, why more of a condo focus, because we don't have a lot of owner options in Monona. We've had a lot of discussion about workforce housing, as Patrick mentioned. So I guess consideration for some of the different housing types might be worth spending a little bit of time on. Sustainability is another theme that we talk about a lot. So how are you going to connect it to the bike? Have a different way for people to get around than just needing their car. Let's see. I think those are my main comments. Oh, the massing. It's really hard to tell from the drawings, and just from the. I'm not sure which one I prefer. The point about having parking in front of the commercial is really a good one, but I didn't necessarily love that either. And I know it's very early stages, so I think consideration for the parking is really critical, and that might drive the residential, as other commissioners have mentioned. So I think that is it for me.
Thank you, Corey. Christy?
Thank you. I am a fan of the housing in this area. I think the mixed use could work here. I think I agree with your comments that what you have there probably is not current and best use. But I think the mixed use could work. And I know what you said, we need more housing, but I don't know that apartments, and especially more market rate apartments, is it. And so I'm really hoping you'll envision something just more creative and unique than another big market rate apartment complex. This property is a phenomenal location, and whatever you do here is going to have major implications on Southtown for the future, and really that entire western corridor of Broadway. I think, let's see. Yeah, I really hope you'll consider some kind of affordable housing component, because we are in affordable housing crisis here in Dane County and really all over the country. So I think that really needs to be given strong consideration. With the parking, I understand your comments about the blend can work when you have commercial and apartments, but like Susan said, the gap is too broad, and I don't think you'll be able to bring that together, especially because people are going to continue working from home. A lot of people, a lot of companies have transitioned to that, so I think you're going to have to fix that. On your plans, I would say, for me, the Rainmaker development, I love your idea of a public space. I think it's really important for something like this to have quality, thoughtful, public urban space. But for this is I look at this courtyard going, is this designed for people or for cars? And I don't think that blend can work. It just would not be a comfortable space. People would not want to hang out there. That is my opinion. If you look at your renderings of those plazas, which are fabulous, they're tight spaces. So, humans love edges when you're designing any kind of urban public space. People love edges. When we hang out, people don't like sitting out in the middle. It's an evolutionary thing. The person out in the middle is the one that gets plucked off, right? So you want to sit on the edges and kind of sit back and not be the star of the show. And that's a more comfortable space. So, I was thinking if you had your commercial, if you created a plaza with your commercial running down there, that could work. I think some of your plaza renderings here look fantastic. So I hope you'll go more in that direction as far as creativity goes. Let's see. Oh, we definitely do need more office space. So I really want you to keep as much commercial there as you can. And it's, we've had a shortage of office space for a long time, and some of our office buildings are just older. So I think having modern office spaces would be great. You said your occupancy is at 70%. I mean, in this climate, that's fantastic. And like, you know, in your older buildings. So I think you could really crush it if you kept some office spaces in there. I think that could be really, that is definitely needed in our community. Let's see. I think that's really, you know, so many people mentioned all the other things, you know, really thinking about the pedestrian flow, the pedestrian access, bicycling access. I mean, you're really close to the Cap City Trail, you're close to the Lake Loop. So yeah, just, little work to do there, but I am a fan of the mixed use there.
Thank you. I would just say as chair that I have mixed feelings about it, but I think it can work. But I think you know, a lot of what you're hearing here tonight is that we need to see something that is more creative than a couple of big boxes, both in terms of landscaping, in terms of amenities. I mean, Southtown is not Hilldale, you know, in terms of, you know, all kinds of commercial spaces with some residential, and it's not Atwood, you know, which is to say, you know, again, mixed use buildings right on the sidewalk, with a lot of, you know, apartment buildings above. So, and certainly could this help Southtown? Absolutely. But I think there needs to be a lot more thought into the, you know, generally into the design. And I'm just going to go right back to what Brian and what we've all said. But Brian said at the very beginning, if you have a parking problem, you have a density problem. They're definitely related. They're always related. And this group is, you know, we've been burned, frankly. You should know that you know, at times when we have said, oh well, we'll be okay, people will walk more, or we really don't need that much parking, it's come back to bite us, so to speak. So so it's definitely a major issue. But it sounds to me overall like this group is leaning in towards a consideration of mixed use here. Is that fair to say? The majority here is leaning in. They want to see more. Yeah?
I think so.
Okay. So do you guys feel like you got some good direction tonight?
Got a lot of good feedback. No, we appreciate it from all different angles. So we got some work to do. I'm just grateful for, I took lots of notes. So we'll review it together and, you know, get engaged. Again, this was when we met with staff. Their recommendation was just, you know, put together, you know, some information to see if there's some interest. So there's a lot more we can add to this. Again, it was just a couple of different density studies and then trying to share some vision stuff and history on the park. So yeah, I think we can really take a lot of this and try to incorporate some creativity and at least provide some feedback as what we think we can do on this site. And then if that's something that continues to get some momentum, we can continue down that road. But yeah, we're excited. We think it's a great site now and long term. I mean, again, the vision that someone mentioned, what's I think it was Chris, you know, what's going to bring people to this site now and look forward 10, 20 years from now when things do change around Southtown and in the area. We certainly want this to fit in and for people to be feeling good of where they live. So, Brian, I don't know if you have anything else to add, but
nope, that was great, Brett. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay. Find my agenda. Here we go. Okay. That takes us to number 7, reports of staff and commission members. Staff report.
Thank you. So looking forward in terms of upcoming projects, the next meeting on March 14th, we'll have the formal consideration of the Dave Jones project over on Industrial, I think 2101. They've submitted plans and they're over at Vierbecker right now being reviewed, so that'll be coming forward. As well as the Slindy GDP consideration. You may have seen a couple folks in the meeting tonight. It was the Class 1 notice was posted just because of timing needs, but they have decided they pushed it to the 14th to incorporate some more of that feedback and just to take some of those things on board. So there are a couple folks here to speak on that, and that's the reason why there was that. But the mailings will be going back out again for a GDP potential consideration on the 14th. And I just wanted to give an update on that there was some discussion about some of the public notices and a little bit of the process in terms of how that is handled by staff. You know, one idea that came up was working on the city website to almost have more of a notice board type design. So, you know, when this is posted, when agendas are posted for all commissions and boards that I staff, they all go on this on the notice board at City Hall, at the library, and over at the senior center. But the concept was put forward of, you know, why don't we do something on the website too? They are obviously posted under each specific board, commission. But I think just having a central point where you can almost see them in some way in a more easily digestible option may well be something that we can look into. So I raised it at a staff meeting. It seems like something we can do, you know, on the back end with the website. So something I'll keep the commission updated as things move forward on that. But hopefully another place that we can reference in the newsletter and sort of, you know, take things a little more digital as well. And then finally for me was just a question as we look forward with, you know, the changing mask mandate and such, just to ask the commission. Applicants are asking if this will be, you know, continue to be hybrid or if it will go back to in person. So I would just pose that to the commission, you know, comfort levels of potentially coming back at some point in the future to in person and when that may be. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Well, I'm going to take that right now, actually, that question right now for the commission. How are people feeling in terms of going back in person? All those leaning towards hybrid options, so those of us that want to be there in person can be there in person. Raise your hand. Okay. Pretty much answers that question. I'm into, Doug, let's go hybrid.
Great. Thank you.
Can I just make one more comment about that? I guess the hybrid is sometimes a little harder to follow or to see people, and I guess if we go in person, I'd hope most people would try to get there in person. I don't know if people are, unless they're not comfortable yet. I understand that part. So anyway, I thought I'm fine with going in person.
I hear what you're saying, Susan. Corey?
I was just wondering, are the applicants asking because they would like to be in person, or do they like the virtual?
I would say there's a balance. It does vary. There's certainly some applicants who maybe are in Chicago or a little further away, and so it suits them to be able to dial in certainly. But definitely the more recent applicants we've had are more local, and I think that they would like to come, build that rapport, and, you know, have that face-to-face. And I will say as well, as the only person in the room, the 2 projectors are now working here at City Hall or at the library. So that does help with the back and forth. And, you know, if it were a true hybrid, that would, I would hope, be helpful as well. So.
Great, Doug, thank you. Yeah, I would concur with Susan, certainly. That I would encourage people to come in person. I think it does make a difference. I think it makes a difference for this body as a body, which is just to say, I miss seeing you all in person. I think our connection with each other, and as we're giving feedback to applicants, is improved when we're there in person. And I think it's probably better for the developer as well. So, but but obviously, if you need to be home or if there's some other reason that you don't feel comfortable, the hybrid's always there. So, but Doug, I would say let's go ahead. Yep, Chris.
I would expand Susan's comment to say that we should encourage all our applicants to be there as much as possible live also.
I would agree.
Different interaction.
I would agree.
I can do that, certainly.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And just as a follow-up to Doug's comment about potentially having a new place on the website, after the last meeting, we had a lengthy discussion about resident notification. As I know there's been some concern about it, and I, just wanted to know more about exactly, besides the 200 radius, I wanted to know more about, how the city goes about getting those notices out, et cetera. And I just want to reassure our community as well as this group that the staff as currently configured does everything humanly possible. I mean, it starts with Brad and, GIS, and a ton of work goes into mailing out those notices. And, other communities like Madison have full-time staff that do nothing but mail out notices. We don't have that luxury in Monona. And so that's exactly, one of the reasons why, Doug raised the whole idea of potentially putting notices in a singular, we obviously post notices in all ways, shapes, and forms, in the paper, et cetera, as required by statute and by our own integrity and expectations as a community. So, but beyond that, we just have to think creatively about other things that we can do to get the word out, because it's definitely, without full-time staff, our staff is out straight. As you can imagine, with our meetings being 3+ hours lately, in order to get ready for these meetings, the amount of effort that Doug and Brian have had to put in with all these proposals is enormous. And so anyway, I just wanted you to know that it's all under discussion, but it's not an easy fix because we just don't have the capital and the office, the human resources to devote more time than what we've already got at the staff level. Yeah, Patrick.
I was just thinking, can we put the notices in the newsletter that we send out, the electronic newsletter? Because that reaches a bunch of people too. I don't think we do that right now, right?
That was definitely going to be the plan. Was that would almost be a central point that that Will, who puts the newsletter together, could go to and just almost pull things out that way. And I'm sure there'll be a way we can do, PDF search and things like that. So if you're looking maybe for a specific address, your street or, certain streets in the city, you should be able to look at those too. So it should be a more central point rather than him having to sort of pull the data together. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Great. Thank you. We covered the upcoming.
Chris has his hand raised.
Yep, sorry. Chris?
I think all electronic methods are really good, and a lot of us see that, but there are still people that don't know unless they get the mailing. And I would certainly err on mailing to too many people than too few. And just for a comparison, when we put together new development in Cottage Grove, they get us the mailing list. We're responsible for mailing all the notices as the developer or as the applicant. We have to do it. And so if we're running into a staffing shortage or mailing shortage, there's nothing that says we can't ask the applicants to mail the notices. We give them the GIS list from Brad, and it's their responsibility to generate the address labels and mail them out. But man, I'd sure err in mailing them to enough places, because that's the biggest way you can hurt people, is say, I didn't know this was going on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. Patrick.
Sorry, I keep hitting mute because my kids are like having a meltdown right now. But what Chris just said, come to think of it, in Madison, I had to mail out notices when I was doing things too. So it's not like it's unprecedented. The city will require me to do that with some of the neighbors too, depending on what we're doing. So it's not really that, like Chris said, it's not unprecedented. It might be something to think about, because he's right that whether we have the resources or not, we're still going to upset people if they're not getting those notifications. So
right. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, and I think one of the other, and I wasn't, by the way, I wasn't at all meaning to suggest or infer that we don't have a responsibility to make sure that people are informed.
Oh yeah, I didn't mean
and the city staff definitely does go the extra mile to do those notices. But this is all a terrific discussion, and I appreciate it.
and then just so you know, it wasn't insinuating that you said that. That wasn't my intent at all.
No, I wasn't saying that you did or
Okay.
the host did. I was just saying in general.
That's part of the problem.
Saying, we don't need to inform the public. I feel exactly the opposite, which is why we're having the conversation and why I raised the conversation with Doug. And I know it's been raised before at city council level as well. Is that, how can we get better? And I'm just saying, listening to Doug, it was really intense to hear about the machinations that they have to go through. It's not as easy as you might think. Christy.
Yeah, I do agree that I was thinking about our recent city council meeting where we are now requiring any restaurant or bar that's having music to contact their neighbors and let them know. And so much like that, I think we should put that on the developers. That's a lot of busy work, and it's a lot of staff time, even the postage. I mean, I think that seems like a developer responsibility.
No.
Can I just ask, I thought one of the issues too, at least in the case of one development that we've been talking about recently, is that the notices go to the property owners, and sometimes there are a lot of tenants, and they don't always get to the tenants, and then they feel very upset and left out. And I'm not sure what the solution to that is, unless there's a specific request put into the property owners to please notify your tenants. And then when you have this additional, I do think putting it on the website where it's more accessible would be a good idea. You could even have a little thing of new developments, just a running news thing that would link people to agendas or link them to plant, whatever. But I thought that was a big part of the problem in some cases recently.
Yeah,
so that's another thing to think about.
I can jump in on that. So just sort of the process that we use, the mailing buffers that are pulled, we will get both the Access Dane information, the Dane County tax information for the property, so the physical address that's within that buffer, as well as the mailing or the billing address for the taxes. So if there is, an out-of-state or out-of-town landlord, for example, we do try, certainly on the Plan Commission level, to look at those and send both, to Chris's point of sort of erring on the side of over mailing rather than under. The difficulty comes in sort of the multi-tenant buildings. For example, with the current, we wouldn't necessarily have 250 mailings that would go out to that. I think one thing I've spoken about at a staff level is certainly for those buildings, building the relationship with the property owner or property manager, such that, can you put these in the mail room, or can you put them in the elevators, things like that, so that multiple eyes get to them without sending mailings to every unit. It's more difficult on the smaller fourplexes, things like that. But one of the bigger difficulties is just the information that goes in, or sort of the input data, not having what we need. So I see these as evolving lists that certainly when something like the bloom comes in, and we hear from folks that haven't been noticed, they get added to the list such that moving forward, they're noticed as well. So it's not a perfect science, and that's sort of why we try and, go to different outlets too, rather than just the mailing. But that certainly is the best, the most direct approach still. Yeah.
Great, Doug. Again, good discussion. Brian just put a question in the chat. I don't know if you saw that, Doug.
I did
It's
not.
not a question, it's a statement. So you can sign up for email alerts for every council and committee that the city has, and you can sign up and it directly emails you telling you that there's been a new agenda item anytime there's an update to minutes. So there is a direct way that anybody can get updates for any agendas in any minutes for any city, commission, council, or group.
Right. Yeah, and Doug, that's probably a good thing to talk to Will about, and then a newsletter to put a reminder about that, because I know that not everybody knows that that's a possibility. And we probably don't say it often enough, or for that matter, we could do PSAs on WVMO about that. I know I've had to sign up for alerts 3 different times because for whatever reason, I don't know if it's when my computer updates or when the city updates their website, but I'll have it for a while and then all of a sudden I'll lose it. I don't know if anybody else has had that experience, but
I know definitely the subscriber base we have to the, I think, monthly newsletter is certainly much greater than any of the individual ones I send to. So I think that's a good reminder that we can reach a lot of people and suggest that to them to sign up for those sort of automated alerts, definitely.
Terrific. Great. Well, with that, any other updates, discussion on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging?
Nothing from staff.
Okay. I would just say that for those of you that may have missed it, we had a fantastic event on Friday at San Damiano with the Ho-Chunk Nation. It was a collaborative event between the Ho-Chunk Nation, the City Department of Parks and Recreation, and the Friends of San Damiano, and we all felt really strongly that it was an appropriate first big kind of inaugural event there, given that it's the ancestral land of the Ho-Chunk, and we had a great turnout, somewhere between 200 and 250 people over the course of the event, on 3 weeks' notice, and had a terrific turnout from not only the Ho-Chunk Nation, but we had members of the Winnebago tribe of Nebraska also drive from Nebraska through snowstorms to get here to participate in the snow state games, and just gotten some really terrific feedback from the community and terrific feedback from Bill Quackenbush, the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, as well. So I think it was a great event, and there'll be more to come for sure. So. Updates, discussion on sustainability. The Sustainability Committee, as you might imagine, is gearing up for Earth Day. We'll be having another big recycling event at Huska Park. That was a huge success last year with over 200 cars that drove through to recycle a lot of electronics as well as styrofoam, and we're adding to that. So there'll be information coming up about that. Anything else? Plan Commission requests for information from city staff. Chris.
I'm out of line. It's not a request for information, but I would like to just thank Ryan and Patrick for volunteering to step up and serve on the council, because as an average citizen, I think it's great. It's a lot of work, and appreciate you guys stepping up. Thank you.
Thanks.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed. On both counts, I'm grateful to you two, and it is a lot of work. Yeah, Christine.
Oh yeah, I had one sustainability announcement to make. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that legislation that's potentially moving through, and it could come to a vote. It's Assembly Bill, let me see if I can get this up, 588 or Senate Bill 573, which makes EV charging illegal for any enterprise. Like the city could not provide EV chargers, even if those are owned and operated by MG&E. It completely 100% corporatizes EV charging. So I just want to make people aware that we're looking at that at the city and trying to take steps on that. It's last week's Cap Times, and I could send an email. This Cap Times is a good article because the city of Madison has those EV chargers all over. They have hundreds, and so if those are made illegal, that's just really going to be very unfortunate because it's even an economic development measure. So I can send an email to that article.
We also we've sent some links out, so I definitely can follow up with that with people. Susan.
Well, I was just going to say, important to contact the governor on that because that's the only way you're going to see it not happen.
Yeah, hopefully he's going to veto it. I think that's what it's like.
But he needs to hear from people, so.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Chris?
Could I just ask, what's the rationale for that? Is it just that the cities aren't competing with private corporate? I mean, I don't even understand the sense in it.
Because the city competing with the utility, yeah.
I don't think it's that because MG&E still owns those. I think it was a last minute amendment that was put in, and I think I don't understand it. I actually don't understand it either. But it was a last minute amendment that was put in a bill, and it ended up passing that committee. So they can bring that to vote at any point. But yeah, it doesn't make sense. Especially,
we don't agree on things. I mean, we don't agree on things, but that doesn't. There's usually some logic on one side or the other as to why they want to do it.
Well, and if you look at the bipartisan infrastructure law, there is a ton of funding going to be coming forward for electric vehicles. And so to do this kind of measure, it just makes no sense at all. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
We need Rob.
With Rob not being here, I'll move adjournment.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Fantastic. We're adjourned. Congratulations, you guys. A relatively quick meeting. All things
Have a good night.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, sir. Night.
Really appreciate everything.